your host today for the Top of the Morning Show. Today we're coming to you from the Women's Heritage Center, 39 West Lexington Street. And as I look around and see all of these accomplished women, it leads towards our guest today. Today we're going to do something a little serious. Our guest today is Ginger Miller. We're going to be talking about the issue of homeless veterans. You'll be amazed at some of the things we find out. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Hello again, everybody. I'm Jerry Getka, and our guest today is Ginger Miller. And Ginger, why don't you tell everybody the name of your organization?
The name of my organization is John 142 Inc.
John, now that's a nonprofit, correct?
Yes, it is. It's a nonprofit.
And what is its purpose?
The purpose of John 142 Inc. is to service and support homeless veterans and veterans that are at risk of being homeless.
You say service and support. In what ways do you do that?
We provide housing options and referral services.
So you own lots of houses all over Baltimore?
No, we don't own houses, but we partner with different agencies like
Okay.
Social Services, Department of Family Services, Department of Veterans Affairs, and we use those resources to provide veterans with the housing services that they need.
Okay, and how do you find these veterans, or how do they find you?
We've been in existence for 2.5 years now, so we have a good reputation with the community. We do a lot of advocacy and outreach, and so veterans normally call us, or either another department will refer the veterans over to us.
How did you begin this? I mean, where did it all come from?
Okay, I started John 142 Inc. because I was homeless back in the early 1990s. I am a veteran. My husband is also a veteran. And he has post-traumatic stress disorder. So 2.5 years ago, I got to the point to where I just couldn't take all of these mood swings and the symptoms that come along with the post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yours or his?
His. His, yeah. And I said, you know, is this marriage a blessing or a curse? I said, something has to give here.
Yeah.
So basically, I just felt like it was time for me to go out in the community to help those veterans that didn't have a strong support system the way that he did. And then I formed John 142 Inc.
You say you served?
Yes, I served. I was in the Navy.
In the Navy?
Mm-hmm.
In what time frame and where did you serve?
I was in the Navy from 1988 to 1992.
Okay.
I was stationed in Annapolis, Maryland, and then I married my husband and we got stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
So you married while you were both in the service?
Yes.
And I assume you went to North Carolina because he's a Marine?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And where had he served?
He had served in Annapolis, Maryland, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Then he went to Africa and to the first Desert Storm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And when you got out of the service, what was your life before that when you got out of the service, all of a sudden you were homeless?
Well, it was a process. We just didn't come out of the service and instantly become homeless.
Okay.
My husband was promised a job in Philadelphia, I believe it was. It was a correctional facility, and he had got approved to be a correctional officer. So we decided to move from North Carolina to stay with my family in New York until the job came open. Unfortunately, the job got canceled because of federal funding, which was kind of like a bummer. And then my husband's post-traumatic stress disorder kicked in. My brother, who has like 3 kids, got custody of his kids. And my mom and dad was like, well, you know what? It's 3 kids versus 2 adults and 1 kid. You guys have to find some place to go.
It seems amazing to me that you say your husband suffered from the post-traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't the armed services provide some sort of care in that case?
Well, in the they did. In the early 90s, because he was a young Marine at that particular point in time, the VA did have services, but most of the groups had veterans from like the Vietnam era.
Okay.
And the veterans of today, we really can't relate. So he would go to these different sessions and then he would sit there, but there was nothing that he was really getting out of it to kind of like help him, because everything at that particular point in time was geared towards the older veterans.
So there are hierarchies of veterans, and the services are geared towards those particular age groups, for example?
Absolutely. Back then, before we had this influx of, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, the biggest thing was Vietnam. There was a bigger,
I remember that.
Right, there was a bigger community of the Vietnam veterans. So it wasn't until, I would say, like maybe about 5 years ago that the shift really took occurred. To say, and now we have younger veterans. The VA decided to step up and gear some of these services to the younger veterans. So unfortunately for my husband, that happened after he really needed the services for the younger groups.
Okay, so you've gotten out of the service, you lived with family in New York for a while, and that couldn't continue.
Right.
And then what happened?
Okay, we ultimately ended up living in substandard conditions for maybe about 2.5 years. I worked 3 jobs and I went to school full time, taking care of my husband with post-traumatic stress disorder, and our son, who at the time may have been about maybe 2 years old, 2 or 3 years old.
Wow. Wow, that's, it sounds like, it doesn't sound like an uncommon story. I mean, were you alone in all this, or were there others in your circle that you knew were going through the same thing?
No, I was completely alone in this. Because I went back to a town that's not really military friendly, it was kind of rare. And because I was going through what I went through with my husband with the post-traumatic stress disorder, I didn't really tell anybody because I felt different.
You felt alone.
I felt alone.
By yourself.
And at that particular time, the VA wasn't a big thing about homeless veterans then. You may see one on the corner, maybe 1 or 2, but now it's different.
Why is it different now?
It's different now because there's so many homeless veterans. At one point about 2 years ago, I think the count was like 107,000 homeless veterans on any given night.
When you're homeless, what is that like? I have no conception of that.
For me, it was a difficult time in my life. I didn't have a lot of direction, but because I do have a strong belief in God, I just wanted to get out of my situation. It wasn't until years after that I realized, you were really homeless. You were in a bad situation. But because I was focused and I was driven to get myself out of the situation, and I worked 3 jobs and went to school full time, I didn't have time to concentrate on my situation.
Well, where did you go for food and shelter? And I mean, if you're homeless.
Right, like I said, we lived in substandard conditions. We were in and out of motels. There was 1 or 2 nights that we had to sleep in a vehicle, But the whole time, I just remained focused because my husband, he had the post-traumatic stress disorder. So he was in and out of jobs if he worked at all. So I said to myself, either you're going to take the reins or this ship is going to go down.
So you started this organization.
Yes.
How do you start up something like that? I mean, you just go out and say, I'm going to open a place? But before you answer that,
right,
we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm here with our guest today, Ginger Miller, and Ginger is talking about the organization that she started up to support homeless veterans.
Right.
And before the break, I asked you the question, how did you begin such a thing? I mean, do you just walk out on a street corner and hold up a sign and say, here we are? Or, I mean,
no, we actually, I did some research with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and just so happened I started the organization in April, and they had a conference in New Orleans in May. So I went to the conference and I just did my research, got connected with the right organizations. It's a lot of research to make sure that you're doing it the right way. And one thing I try to stress is that when you're doing something like this, it's great to have a strong foundation. You just can't open up one day and decide, okay, this is what I want to do. Because this is something that's serious, it's critical, and veterans need somebody out here that's going to do the right thing.
Is there a network of these types of organizations? I mean, 107,000 homeless veterans. I mean, it can't be just you.
No, of course not. No, there's not me. There's other people that actually have other organizations that have direct services throughout the United States of America, but unfortunately, it's just not enough.
Okay.
It's not enough.
And you base your services primarily, or your help of the homeless veterans primarily in the Maryland, Baltimore area?
Well, Maryland, D.C., Virginia. We get calls from New York. We got calls from Atlanta. You know, we have plans on expanding at 3 different places this year. There's a lot going on right now with the homeless veterans in this community. And as I stated earlier, one organization can't do it all.
Are your clients come to you mostly from word of mouth and people
word of
talk
mouth,
to each other?
Word of mouth. We have a website. We're on Facebook, so we do a lot of social media.
Well, why don't you tell people how to reach you if they need you?
Okay, you can reach us at www.john142vets, that's VETS.org. You can find us on Facebook, and we're also on Twitter.
Okay, and all of that will be running across the bottom of the screen over time, so people will be able to find you again. Now, you say 142 vets. What's the 142?
Yeah, John 14:2 Inc. is a scripture from the Bible, and it reads, "In my Father's house there's many rooms. If it was not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you." So in my heart, we want to prepare that place for veterans to come home, to have some place to lay their head, some place where they feel safe, where they feel that, you know what, I fought for my country, and now I'm getting what I deserve.
Yeah, it seems to me, again, that we don't do enough for our veterans, and they should be supported in many ways, not just the homeless, but I mean, for anyone coming back after spending part of their life.
Absolutely.
How did it impact and affect your life before and after? I mean, what had you been doing before and then after?
Okay, I was a loan officer in Greenbelt, Maryland. I did that for 6 years, and it was great. You know, I had a great clientele. It was rewarding, but at the same time, I had my own personal issues at home with my husband with the post-traumatic stress disorder. So prior to John 14:2 Inc., I was a loan officer.
Okay. And you said you had one child as well, correct?
Right, we had one child then. We actually have 2 now. The oldest son, who was actually homeless with us at that point in time, is a student at the University of Maryland, College Park. And we're so proud of him.
Cool. I used to teach there.
Oh, did you really?
I want to.
Oh, wow.
What is he studying?
He wants to be an anesthesiologist.
Wow.
Yes, and he's in the band.
So he's got 2 careers going at the same time.
Absolutely, and I think it's great because we've come such a long way. And you know, I think that's very inspirational because there's other veterans going out here. You want the best for your kids, and you know, with John 14:2 Inc., we want to let veterans know that there is hope. We want to help them restore that hope.
It sounds like you're very, very much involved. Is your son or either of your children and your husband as much involved?
You know, my husband, he used to come out when we first started John 14:2 Inc., but you know, he still suffers from the post-traumatic stress disorder, and because now I'm on the road so much, he stays home with the younger son. Now my older son, you know, he's sort of like his mother. He goes out and they feed homeless people during Thanksgiving. He comes out during the point in time count to look for homeless veterans, to give them blankets and hot coffee and things of that nature.
How do you raise funding? I mean, where does the money come from?
You know what? Honestly, right now, there is no funding. I've been funding everything, you know, from my disability check. I'm a disabled veteran. And I think now that we have a strong foundation, we can go out here now and have a fundraiser. We can go out here now and solicit funds because now people know.
Why don't you do that right now?
Okay. If you want to donate to John 14:2 Inc., please feel free to contact us. We've been out here for 2.5 years. We have a strong foundation, you know, and now we're ready to take this show on the road because the veterans need us. The president made an announcement yesterday that he's going to bring home all the troops by the end of the year, and we need to get prepared. And in order for us to do that, we need your help.
And where do they send these donations to?
To John 14:2 Inc., Unit 350, 7045, Berry Road, Accokeek, Maryland, 20607.
And we'll put all that on the screen as well, right after we come back from this break. Our guest is Ginger Miller, and in our earlier segment, I had asked Ginger about the differences between the old vets and the new vets. And during the break, we had an interesting conversation about the differences. If you elaborate on that, please.
Well, one of the big differences I see now is that the veterans that are coming back today are really different because they're surviving injuries, whereas years ago, they would not have survived those injuries. We have veterans coming back with half heads, literally. We have veterans coming back that are torsos and they're living, you know, and it's not just the veterans, but it's the caregiver of those veterans as well that's suffering. You have women who are 20 years old and they get married to their knight in shining armor. He goes to war and he comes back. Now he's a paraplegic and you're 20 years old and now you're not a bride anymore, but you're a caregiver also. And that's very stressful.
It is very stressful. The thing that seems most stressful to me is our military, the people that we send to war, or what we call war these days, are hamstrung. You're not allowed to actually go to war.
Right.
I mean, World War II, it was totally destructive.
Right.
But you're not allowed to do that anymore. It's too political. I mean, what I truly don't understand, my generation, of course, was the Vietnam War.
Right.
And during that time frame, there was a lot of unrest and a lot of support. There were sit-ins and demonstrations. Is there any of that going on now?
Well, I don't really see a lot of that, and I think because of the generation that we live in today, a lot of young people are on the internet, they're playing video games. You know, as parents, we're oftentimes busy, you know, we're on the computer, we're on Facebook, so nobody's really paying attention to the core of what's really happening with the veterans today. You know, people really don't have time to watch the news the way that they used to because everybody's busy. With the economy, you have dual households that's working 3 jobs. You know, so it's tight. I think we need to raise the level of awareness to let the community know that, you know, we have a problem here in America.
How would we do that?
I do a lot of advocacy and outreach. You know, and I think that's the best way. I go to different speaking engagements on Capitol Hill. I did Senate press conferences with senators. You know, we have roundtables in Annapolis. We're just always out here. Anytime I get a chance to talk about the veterans, I do that.
How can the community at large help you in that?
You can contact me at gmiller@john142vets.org.
Okay. All right. How important do you feel it is to get the next generation aware and involved? And is it possible that we can keep them from going through the same things?
You know, I don't know if it's possible that we can keep them from going through the same things, but I think it's important to get them actively involved and to let them be aware of what's really happening with the veterans that's coming back so they can have a certain level of respect for what the veterans have done for this country. And oftentimes I find with schools, like on, I think they call it like Bring Your Kid to Work Day, or in the schools they call it Professional Business Day. A lot of times veterans will come in and they'll speak to the children in the school to let them know, you know what, we served your country, you know, this is what we did. And I think children need to be made aware of who's out there fighting for them.
That's a great point. You know, I think back to when I went to school and think back when my children went to school, and I think of the history books.
Right.
And history books don't address this subject at all.
They don't.
How do we change that? I mean, should it be in the history books? I mean, should we hit it that hard?
I think it should definitely be in the history books, you know, what has happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. Absolutely. I think we need to hit it hard. We need to hit it hard so that America as a community can have an understanding of what these veterans are facing when they come home. We need to hit it hard. We need to hit the ground running. Absolutely.
It occurs to me that this type of thing comes best from veterans.
Absolutely.
When you first went into the military, was there recruitment of some kind? Did you go into some office? Did they tell you any of this?
No, they didn't tell me anything. I actually went into the military, into the Navy, because my parents could not afford to send me to college, so I wanted the GI Bill. Okay. So for me, it was kind of like simple. Go into the military, get the GI Bill, come home. But I had no idea what would happen after I got out. You know, you're just not prepared for what's going to happen when you get out of the military.
And even the military itself doesn't address that, doesn't bring that to your attention, or give you any idea of what might happen.
Absolutely not. Back then they had a 3-day transitional course, and you did that, and then you were released to go home. And I think right now, Department of Defense is working with something, because you could be in Iraq today, killing somebody at 12 o'clock, and at 7 o'clock you're on a plane back home. So guess what? You're still in attack mode. So these veterans need to be debriefed before they come back home. Something needs to happen concerning that.
I think that's an important point, and I think we're going to address that a little bit further, but we're going to take a short break real quick. Back, everybody, again. I'm your host, Jerry Gatka, our guest, Ginger Miller. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we have.
We've talked about some things that are very sensitive, some not quite so sensitive, some issues that need to be addressed, and should be addressed.
Absolutely.
Is there anything, again, that we haven't covered? Any last thoughts on your part? Have I evoked any feelings that you want to tell everybody about?
Well, I would just like to say that, you know, in my thought of thoughts and my wishes, I would like for America as a community to be more sensitive to the needs of veterans when they come home. They need some place to stay, just like we have some place to stay. They didn't ask to be in the particular situation that they're in right now, but I think as a community, and I say America as a community because we need to be that close to address this issue, and we need to welcome our veterans with open arms. Don't wait till we get to the point to where they're abusing drugs and alcohol, and then we feel like we don't want them anymore, because it's not right. We can grab this bull by the horns and stop it right now.
You bring up a very interesting point. You said they could be noon somewhere in some foreign country carrying a weapon, ready to kill somebody, worried about getting shot and killed themselves, and then within hours be back on American soil at their hometown and expected to act normal.
Correct.
You talk about community. Would it make sense for when they come back to be a community amongst themselves as a military for a while to get to a normal point?
I think that could be a good idea, you know, but not a great idea, because they still need to be integrated. So I think, you know, normally there's a transitional course of 3 days. Maybe if we can make that longer.
Well, the reason I say that is because, again, my background is I'm Polish American. My grandmother came over, and when the ethnicities, the ethnic groups come over, they usually stay in their own little groups for a while, and they're integrated within a larger group, but they have the support of their own in that smaller group within the larger group, and then of course they go out. And I'm thinking, that happens naturally. Why can't the military make that happen for the purposes of supporting their military, you know, the people who serve us? It almost would make sense to me.
Yeah, now that you put it that way, it probably would make sense to do something similar to that. But at the same token, the veteran still needs to be reintegrated. So I think maybe what we're both trying to say is there need to be a cooling off period for these veterans.
That makes sense.
To let them cool off and realize, okay, you know what, now you're back home and, you know, you're safe. But at the same time, these veterans are thinking, okay, now I have to feed my family, now I have to get a job, do I need to go back to school? There's no more paychecks on the 1st and 15th of the month. You know, especially if you only serve, like, let's say 2 or 3 years, then you're just back into society. Now you have to fight for jobs.
Is that true? I mean, immediately you come out of the service and you're cut off, there's no recompense, there's no pay for any period of time afterwards?
You get paid for a certain period of time.
Oh, okay.
Let's say if you draw unemployment. Okay, and unemployment, I don't know what the time frame is if it's 6 months, but during those 6 months, you still have to prepare yourself for what's going to happen after those 6 months. So you never really get an opportunity to say, well, you know what, let me just sit here and think, you know, and get my thoughts together, you know.
And cool down.
And cool down. You know, I killed 3 people over there. That's against my moral belief. You know, people deal with that. These veterans, they deal with that. So I think there should be some type of cooling off period, a longer transitional period, or something. Something needs to happen.
You would think as many wars and police actions and whatever else we call these things that we get involved in, that with as much practice as the country has had sending people off to war, that we'd be better at it when they come back.
Well, you know, I honestly, I don't think anybody was prepared for this. You know, I think because of a series of events and the different wars that happened, and one happened, and then something else happened, and there's something else happening over here. There's so many veterans. There's so many veterans right now, and it's like, oh, we're going to be.
It can't be. I mean, again, we dealt with this probably during the Civil War, when almost the whole country was involved in it, and everybody was a veteran and had to go back immediately to their things, and we still aren't very good at it.
Right, but there's one thing we have to take into consideration. Now we have females.
Ah, totally different.
So now the number is higher.
You're right.
And then when you have females, now you're dealing with the children of those females. You have mothers that's going to wars, that's leaving their kids behind. So I mean, now it's just like men, women. Then you have the households, you have the children. You know, so it just keeps going and going and going. And that's why I say we need to grab this bull by the horns.
Hadn't thought about that, and all of that is certainly subject matter for a greater debate than what we could do right here. So we're going to take a break.
Right.
Welcome back again, everybody. I'm Jerry Getka. Our guest is Ginger Miller. We're talking about homeless veterans and the support they either have or don't have. One of our topics was talking about fundraising and whatnot. It occurs to me there must be some ex-military who have come back and have weathered through all of this and managed to make it through and have become successful. Let's ask them for something to help you here. There must be some angel out there, some donor sponsor who might want to get involved because of their experience in this.
Absolutely. You know, we're all looking for sponsors. We're all looking for donors to help us out on this mission so that we can serve and support veterans in need. And there was also one thing that I neglected to mention.
Please.
We just started Women Veterans Interactive, where we cater just to women veterans, because that's a whole nother issue.
Why is that different?
You know, it's different because, you know, women, normally you have a woman in the military, she has a family, she has a kid, or maybe multiple children. We get phone calls almost on a weekly basis for female veterans sleeping in their vehicles, you know, with kids. And then you figure that's going on to the second generation now. So this is something that we really have to stop, because if the kid is missing school, he's not doing his homework, he's not being fed properly, then that's yet another generation that America as a community that we're going to have to take care of.
There are a lot of things to think about in these issues, and I don't know that we can address them all in depth here.
Right.
So we're going to take another break.
Great.
And we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. You're just in time for us to say goodbye. I'm Jerry Getka again, and I'm here with our guest Ginger Miller from the
John 14.2 Inc.
John 14.2 Inc. And it's been an interesting show, and I've learned lots of things that I didn't know about.
Right.
107,000 homeless veterans. That's absolutely incredible.
It is.
And we've also learned that you have a large need to help support the work that you do.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you wanted to tell everybody that we haven't talked about so far?
You know what, I just want to tell everybody to stay focused and to open your hearts and open your minds to the veterans that are coming back, because it's hard for them. It's hard for them when they come back and they really have no place to go. It's not their fault, you know, it's just a situation that they find themselves in. But I think if we pull together as America, we can make a good thing happen for our veterans.
And I can't top that, so I'm going to say thank you for being a guest.
My pleasure.
Thank you for the work that you do. And let's say goodbye to everybody. Bye-bye, everybody.
And then when you go off set, chat with your guest a little bit.
Welcome back again, everybody. I'm Jerry Getka, and we've wrapped our show today with Ginger Miller and homeless veterans. But I hope it's not a wrap for you. I hope that you do take the time to at least look into it a little further. Maybe take the time to meet with some of your friends and neighbors who have gone through this issue and send a little donation to Ginger Miller and the work she's trying to do. Very serious stuff. You should be a part of it. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.